We have models to follow as we hear in the gospel tonight. I want to share just a brief story of two people I've known along the way. Both of them are people I knew when I was in seminary at Catholic University in Washington. One fellow, his name is George. He's a priest in the Archdiocese of Washington. He's been serving parishes in Washington, D.C. for, say, 32 years. And his parents work for the Smithsonian. Why is that important? Well, let me throw this out to you. We have such a richness with the readings that we share. Every time we gather here, we break open the Word before we break open the bread. And we break open the Word tonight. It's Holy Thursday. It's the first night of the Triduum. Such an exciting time. Lent is over. We're moving into a new season. The story of life and death and new life unfold for us in a very, very immediate and real way for us in these days. In fact, we don't celebrate 3 days per se. We celebrate one unfolding story about Jesus and his gathering, his dying, and his rising. We might go home tonight, but we pick up with the gospel story tomorrow and the day after. The story continues. We need the time out along the way. One story continues all through these 3 days. There is so much richness there. Tonight, do we want to spend time talking about, well, the Passover meal? Do we want to spend time talking about Jesus at the table, telling the disciples how to pray in very specific ways that we hear and remember and memorialize every time we come to this table with our gifts of bread and wine? Or do we spend this time with the gospel, talking about Jesus washing people's feet? Wow, that's all three very different images. My friend, whose parents worked at the Smithsonian, said, "You ought to see what we have. You like these? You like what's on display tonight? You ought to see what we have in the back room. You ought to see what we have in warehouses over in Virginia. We've got lots of things to display." Being Catholic and taking this all in is not an either or I want only this one. Our being Catholic speaks to a richness that we draw from that is wide and deep and wonderful and very, very fruitful. It's not either or. It's never either or. Being Catholic is about both and. Draw in everything. Draw in the richness of diverse scripture. Draw in images that speak to our hearts in different ways. Maybe different ways today than last week. Where does the Lord's Spirit call to us in the imagination of hearts that long for the Lord? So good things to keep in mind. So with that in mind, folks, I want you to keep in mind my friend George and his parents and the Smithsonian image, because we have lots to share. Now, I'm going to hone in on just one thing. Another seminarian I knew from the Diocese of Rochester, Brian, who never went on to ordination. Brian, who was very taken because his undergraduate studies were in pre-med. He was thinking about healing in lots of different ways. And the experience of the gospel today, Jesus washing the feet of disciples, sounds like a very menial task. But at its heart, it's about hospitality. It's about making things new and clean. It's about forgiveness and healing. My friend Brian, between his third and fourth years of studies, went back to be an orderly, went back and became a nurse, and works in hospitals in Rochester, particularly among the poor, binding wounds, washing feet, and helping people make their lives whole again. Why do I bring him up tonight? I have friends who say, wow, why is Brian doing that? He could have done what we're doing here. He's doing the work of the Lord. He hears the call, and he serves. And there's Jesus tonight, seemingly misunderstood by no less than Peter, but that's okay. We know. Peter expresses being puzzled from time to time, doesn't he? Peter doesn't always get it on the first bounce, or the second or third, but Peter eventually gets it. The master approaches Peter and wants to wash his feet. Peter's scratching his head. Master, you're going to wash my feet? Yeah, that's what he was saying. He was whining to Jesus. But in the midst of all that, Jesus explains to him that this is how he will share in his inheritance. And Peter's probably thinking, wow, I'm getting an inheritance. But Jesus says to him, do you realize what I've done for you? Of course Peter doesn't. But then he goes on to say, you call me teacher and master, and rightly so, for indeed I am. If I, therefore, master and teacher, have washed your feet, you ought to wash another's feet. I give you a model to follow, so that as I have done for you, you should also do. Now, there are great images and stories. But we have to see beyond them. If you came tonight thinking, oh, wow, Holy Thursday, Last Supper, the Da Vinci portrait, Last Supper, bread and wine, Last Supper, grapes and bread, you can be forgiven in a very both and sense. All those images are very alive in our spiritual imagination, and they fuel our faith. But also, the image of Jesus, how shall I say it, on the night before he dies. Think of any good courtroom drama. Isn't there a certain elocution at the end? Everyone listens to the word of the witness, or the prison guard, or the man on death row the night before he dies. We got the same thing here too. This is the night before Jesus dies. In a particular way, let's listen to his words. If I, the master and teacher, have washed your feet, you ought to do the same. So that I have done for you, you should also do. Jesus is calling to us to be disciples. To be a new Passover? Yes. To share in his body and blood? Yes. But to go and be his disciples. Let's not forget that. That's a very important part of our Holy Thursday Mass of the Lord's Supper celebration. It is the gospel the church gives us. The only one of the four gospels where there is no dinner. There is no Last Supper per se. In John's gospel, we pick up right here at the table. Jesus with water in a basin after the dinner. The story of Jesus inviting the disciples to really be disciples is out there for us to hold on to in our hearts. May we take this chance to think about, say, people like Brian, who heard the call to heal and go be a healer. May we think about the call we have to listen, to forgive, to lift up, to teach, to feed, to heal, to be peacemakers. All the gifts that the Lord has given to us. Here's Jesus on the night before he dies saying, go, I've given you a model to follow. Go, use your gifts so that I have done for you, you should also do. Let us rejoice and be glad. That's an after-dinner thought to keep in mind now, isn't it?